Hey, alright, Drac, it's a pack. Here's your look at the NECA Toys Universal Monsters Dracula Accessory Set. Build even bigger scenes and dioramas with this accessory set for NECA's Universal Monsters Dracula action figure. The centerpiece of the set is the large coffin, which measures almost 9 inches long and opens to fit your Dracula figure inside. The included armadillo, large spider, cricket, and coffin opossum accessories add to the spooky atmosphere. There's no such thing as early mornings for this monster. Before we get a closer look at the Universal Monsters Dracula Accessory Set, I'd like to thank the folks first over at NECA Toys that did provide the sample we're about to have a look at. I'm grabbing now as well the tape measure just to see how tall the coffin stands. Now, of course, Dracula can fit inside of it. We will be bringing the Dracula in a moment. But in the meantime, though, the casket, the coffin, is 9 inches in length, or it's going to be about 22 centimeters long. Bringing now in the other Universal Monsters accessory sets we did look at here on this channel. Here's what the coffin looks like with the sarcophagus for the mummy. And here's what it also looks like with the operating table for Frankenstein's monster. Each one of these also would have their dedicated backdrops that would open up made of cardboard that could be displayed behind it. The downside, of course, of having obviously all three of these so close together like this is you really would only have to then choose one backdrop, because obviously one backdrop will fit about the same size as all three of the accessories in front of it. And of course, if we are going to be looking at Dracula's accessory set, here's what the figure looks like along with the coffin that he's about to lay inside of. Regarding that backdrop, I just so happen to have it right here. It's tri-fold and it's made of thick cardboard, and you simply would just then display behind the casket. It does make for a nice little environmental scene, especially if you're wanting to display these more as dioramas and not necessarily as, I just happen to have this figure, I just happen to have this accessory. It does fill the room rather nicely, literally and figuratively. This will take up a lot more space. And going back to the point I did mention earlier, if you already had yourself the sarcophagus, say, right here, and you already have yourself Frankenstein's operating table, say, right here, there's no way you'd be able to then use the backdrops provided as well with those accessory sets. So you really have to then choose which ones you would like to use. I might just then decide to maybe use right now the one for Dracula, because I think it worked quite well. Not maybe as much for the mummy necessarily, but I think it would work a little bit better for Frankenstein's monster also as well. To note as well that the backdrop, you can clearly see is all done here in black and white, and yet the accessories that come along with it, the opossum, the armadillo, the big giant creepy looking spider, are all done in color. Not to mention as well that Dracula is also going to be a colorized version as well. So yeah, the backdrop is kind of more dedicated for being a black and white release, even though the accessories to come included with it are all colorized. With that being said, let's look at the things that come included with it, and then we'll kind of bring back in Dracula in a moment. First, we get ourselves a tiny little opossum. For a while, I always just called them possums, but I guess the correct term would be an opossum. Adorable little things. If you ever see these things in your backyard, leave them be. They're kind. They're never going to attack you, and their job is really just to eat hundreds and hundreds of insects. I've actually saw some stories online where some people had taken in abandoned babies for opossums. They don't live very long, but they're gentle little souls. Just, again, leave them be. They're a cute little accessory that come included with Dracula, of course. The coloring is mostly here kind of a more darker black or dark gray. Long tail here on the end is colored here nicely in brown. And the individual strands of hair you can see have been done where it's more painted in a lighter gray. I like the face as well of it on the front. I think I would call him Jeremy if I had him as a pet. But you get yourself a tiny little opossum. One that I would certainly not want for a pet, is a big giant spider. Although even in my hand, if that was just a 1-to-1 scale, that spider would be more than enough for me to want to burn the house down. But a pretty creepy looking spider. You can see the fangs on the front of it. I just never like to pick up accessories, whether they're made of plastic or not, of big giant spiders. But you get yourself a spider. For what it is, it doesn't have any posability. None of these accessories have any posability to them, but I would be burning down the house if I had a spider that size inside. The figure also comes included with, not as creepy, an armadillo. I've never really seen, to be honest, an armadillo in person. Obviously they exist, but just not where I live. I ever get the chance to see an armadillo out in the wild. I suppose if I go to a zoo or wilderness area, I probably would be able to find myself an armadillo. I would imagine they would be fun little things to kind of hang around with. I mean, they have hard shells on the top, and I think they're known to kind of go into little circular balls to protect themselves. but a cute little armadillo anyways. Coloring for this does have a little bit of greenish yellow added to the top of it. It's kind of more of a beige, suppose, color, while the majority of the body is kind of more of a darker gray. Along with that, you also get yourself the cricket in the coffin. That sounds to me like a song played with somebody with a violin. The cricket in the coffin. Actually, the cricket is not so much in the coffin as the cricket is sort of outside the coffin, as the tiny little casket lid has already been lifted away, and it looks like the cricket is making his merry little way. Now, that seems to be a creepy looking cricket. A cricket in the coffin. Doo-ba-da-doo-boo-boo-ba-da-doo. Anyways, I do like the coloring of this one, and though the details are quite small, I do think they've handled the cricket quite well. Although the crickets, again, striping on the back, it's not the type of cricket I'm used to seeing. Nowhere to be found, by the way, in the accessory set are bats. I think that's one thing that they could have probably included with this as well. Now, the accessory packs tend to be light on accessories anyways. How many times I've already said accessories? But I think they probably could have also included at least a bat. Now, we already did get ourselves technically a bat with Dracula, so there's that one that you can have displayed with it. But I would like to have gotten like a bunch of bats, tiny little bats that are all sort of connected with one another via maybe, again, their wings all sort of dedicatedly attached, and then they could have just put them on a post and maybe had a couple of those flying around. I think that would have made for a nice little touch as well. But those are the accessories, not counting, of course, the bat. Let's have a look at the actual casket itself. Now, the casket does open up. There's a hinge here on the side. There's actually two hinges to be exact. There's one there and there's one there. The plastic that they've used is pretty good quality. It's a little obviously more on the lighter side because the inside of it is completely hollow. Even though it is hollow, they did take the time to add some brush strokes and texturing, so it does look like it's actually wood. The coloring of it is kind of more of a gray, but then down below here, they've airbrushed a transitional color of a lighter gray, so it looks like there's a little bit of scuffing as this thing's been dragged around. There are a few little latches here, little handles, I suppose, that can be brought out, so that there's technically some part of posability to the casket, but that's basically all it is. It's just literally a casket for Dracula. Overall, it's a nice looking casket. I really don't have any complaints to it. I do actually like and appreciate the fact that NECA Toys took the time to actually finish the bottom of it as well, because they could have just left this behind just to be the big barren bit of plastic, but they did actually take the time to sculpt the little actually grains to the wood, and they've also painted it nicely as well. So it looks maybe not as finished as it does to the front, but at least it does look finished on the back anyways. Come on in. So we'll put that right there. Now, when you are displaying it, I just propped it up initially in the beginning of this review more to measure how high it is. I'm sure most people will probably be displaying caskets, as caskets are normally found to be laying down. They're not going to be upright like a sarcophagus. So maybe this isn't going to be the way that you can be displaying it. You're likely more to be displaying the casket this way, and then you can either choose to then have Dracula sitting inside of it, or you can also have it propped partially up and have Dracula sort of sitting inside. Bringing back in the Dracula we've already had a look at. If you haven't had the chance to check out my review of the Bela Lugosi Dracula, I think it's a good review. Feel free to give it a gander if you have a little bit of time on your hands. Now, you don't necessarily have to remove the cape on the back of Dracula's body in order to have him sitting inside the casket. If you did, for example, want to have him laying down on the job, for example, just kind of hold the back of this. I don't want to really have the lid draped down all the time, because I think it's going to start to add stress to the plastic. But just to show you, Dracula does have enough of this space available to him that he does actually have the means to lay inside the casket. And you can actually have a little more fun with it too. You can fold the cape around him like you're tucking in a baby for a long night's sleep. And Dracula then sits pretty good inside the casket. You can easily then close the lid. And Dracula, other than maybe just having a little bit of his cape hanging out, he actually sits fine inside the casket, or lays fine, I suppose, down inside the casket. And if you wanted to, because of course he does have articulation then in his legs, you can also prop up Dracula as if he's saying good morning. I guess he wouldn't necessarily be saying good morning as much as he would be saying good night. Hello, come on into my chamber. Care for a drink? I have actually a couple of goblets. But yeah, I like the look of that quite a lot. For me, at least, when it comes to displaying this guy, obviously I won't go the route of having this thing sitting up, because that's what we do with sarcophagus. We aren't going to do that necessarily with coffins. Dracula, instead, what I'll do is have him sort of perched or sitting up like this. The only thing about it is, by having the figure, you really want to make sure that his legs are far enough forward, as sometimes I've noticed at least, putting him inside the casket. If you don't have his legs completely straight, Dracula sometimes tends to do exactly what he's doing right now. He tends to kind of lay back down. So you want to just kind of prop him up a little bit as best you can get it. You can also use his arms too. Bring his arm out a little bit to hold the side railing of the casket. And that's one way to keep him from falling down in the coffin inside. All in all, it's a good looking set. Let's just pick up Dracula here right now. We're going to move his cape out of the way, of course, also as well. Again, the only thing I would have done differently to this, I'm overall quite happy with how this set turned out. Of course, you have a couple of options to display the animals, the tiny little critters that go along with Dracula. You can put them, skew them around to the top of the lid there also if you wanted as well, and take the tiny little cricket in the casket. But you can have a nice little display going on with these. The only thing, again, I would have liked to see the set include is maybe tiny little versions of maybe this bat right here, or maybe just smaller, non-identifiable bats, just basically a bunching of bats. A bunching of bats all sort of intermingled with one another, that you could have had a couple of these sort of here and sort of here, like, you know, again, like just little backdrop pieces to go along with the backdrop that comes along with it. But overall, again, nice looking set released from the folks over at NECA Toys. It's late at night, you're wandering the streets looking for a midnight snack, and you'd like to order this set for yourself online. The Dracula Accessory set goes for around $48, so it's about a $10 or so difference from the Dracula we looked at before. For that, of course, you get a large size casket enough to accommodate Drax inside. You get yourself a couple little tiny critters that can wander around either on top of the casket, around the casket, or they can be off going their little snack hunts themselves. The one thing I would worry about the most about taking a tally of all the things that come included with this is the absence of the spider. I just don't like the look of that spider. The casket itself is fairly light in plastic, but still I think NECA's done a great job of painting, not only to give it the look of wood grain, but giving a little bit of scuffing on the bottom of the casket. Of course, this thing's getting moved around as Dracula needs to pick up shop and go and relocate elsewhere. I like that they added a little bit of wear to the bottom of the casket. Now, the only thing, again, that's omitted, I feel at least, is not including bats. I know we already get a bat. Technically, it came included with Dracula in the first place, but I would have done better and maybe included a bunch of bats that come included with this also as well. If that may have increased the price by, say, $5 more, I would have been fine to pay the extra $5 if it just meant we got a couple more bats to go along with this. Of course, one thing not seen here in the final looks of the figure or final looks of the accessory set is the big boarded cardboard backdrop, simply just because it would have blocked it. Every time you didn't see it from the front, you would just literally be looking at the back white blank cardboard, and nobody really wants to see that. Did you guys get the chance to pick this setup for yourself? And if you do, how do you have this displayed? Do you have the cricket in the casket? Boom, 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 boom. Do you have it displayed with it as well? Do you have Dracula sitting inside the casket? Do you have the casket even closed? How do you have this displayed on your shelf? Also, again, if you guys are interested, this one is available as of right now. Big thank you to the folks over at NECA Toys that did provide the sample of the Universal Monsters Dracula Accessory set that we had the chance to have a look in this review. Speaking of reviews, if you guys enjoyed the one you just finished watching, why not throw it a like? Throw it a like a bunch of bats, just flying around in a barren, not so barren, underdwellings of a castle. Also, as well, if you guys are new here and you'd like to stick around for more, please, why not? Make sure, if you haven't already done so, that you hit that subscribe button down below and that you're also turning on the bell notification. We are, by the way, also going to be looking at some more NECA stuff coming your way, but if you need to have your thirst quenched, popping up at the very end of this video will also be a playlist of everything, all the things, everything I've done of NECA from start to finish. Well, I guess it isn't so much finish as we continue to add to that playlist on a regular basis. Lots more stuff coming your way, guys. So, of course, as always, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.